The sun had barely lifted above the rows of manicured lawns and spotless driveways in the gated community of Silver Pines. It was the kind of neighborhood that prided itself on order, on appearances, on control. To outsiders, it looked like a peaceful slice of suburban life. But beneath that polished calm, some residents held tight to a sense of ownership that went far beyond property lines. Marcus Bennett parked his black SUV in front of the two-story home he shared with his wife, Tasha. It had taken years of hard work, 2 jobs, long nights, missed holidays, to afford this house. To him, it was more than a roof. It was a statement, a declaration that his family belonged anywhere they chose to live. That morning, Marcus had just returned from an early run. Sweat clung to his forehead as he stopped by the community gate to help an older delivery driver whose access code wasn't working. The man thanked him, grateful for the assistance. As Marcus was about to leave, a voice rang out behind him, sharp, impatient, and unmistakably authoritative. "Excuse me, you can't be opening that gate for people. Do you even live here?" Marcus turned to see a woman striding toward him, clutching a small dog and her phone. Her name was Karen Hargrove, president of the Homeowners Association. She was known around Silver Pines for her meticulous lawn inspections and endless reminders about community standards. Marcus stayed calm, wiping his brow with a towel. "Morning. Yes, I live here. Just helping the driver, his code wasn't working." Karen narrowed her eyes. "That's not your job. Only residents are allowed access, and I don't recall seeing you before. What house are you with?" Her tone carried that sharp edge Marcus knew too well, the one that questioned not just residence but legitimacy. He kept his composure. "I'm with 42 Lakeview Court. Been here about 2 years now." She blinked, clearly surprised. "Oh? Well, I've never seen you at any of the meetings." "I work evenings," Marcus replied simply, his voice steady. Karen's expression hardened, as if his calmness irritated her more than anything else. "Well, I'll just need to verify that. This community has had issues with outsiders before." She pulled out her phone, already scrolling to the HOA app. Marcus sighed softly. "You're welcome to check. I'm heading home now." But as he walked away, Karen's indignation grew. Something about the way he refused to defend himself further, something about his quiet assurance, made he feel challenged. She lifted her phone again, her voice carrying across the still air. "Don't you walk away while I'm speaking to you. I'm calling the police." Marcus stopped in disbelief, then slowly turned. "You're calling the police? For what, exactly?" "For trespassing. For refusing to identify yourself properly. And for opening the gate without authorization," she snapped. He shook his head, almost laughing. "You've got to be kidding." But she wasn't. She dialed 911. Marcus leaned against his car, crossing his arms. There was no anger in his eyes, just a quiet, tired sadness that came from recognizing an all-too-familiar script. Inside the dispatch center across town, the morning had been calm. Calls about traffic, a minor fender bender, a lost dog. Dispatcher Tasha Bennett sipped her coffee, ready for the next report. Then a new call flashed across her screen. 911, what's your emergency?" she said, her voice professional but warm. "Yes, I'm at Silver Pines Community," came a voice shrill with indignation. "There's a man at the gate who's refusing to let me in. He says he lives here, but I've never seen him before. He looks suspicious." Tasha froze for a moment. She knew that tone. She had heard it before, from other callers describing suspicious people who were simply existing while black. She forced herself to stay steady. "Ma'am, can you describe the person?" "Tall, dark skin, athletic build, wearing a gray running shirt and shorts. He says his name is Marcus Bennett." Tasha's breath caught. Her hand tightened around her headset. "Did you say Marcus Bennett?" "Yes. He's standing right here, acting like he owns the place. I don't feel safe." For a brief second, Tasha's mind raced. Anger and disbelief surged in her chest, but years of professionalism kept her voice even. "Ma'am, please stay calm. Are you or anyone else in immediate danger?" "Well, not yet," Karen huffed, "but he's refusing to cooperate." Tasha inhaled deeply. "Understood. I'll handle this." She muted her microphone and stared at the monitor, her heart pounding. The irony hit her with force. Her husband, calm, decent, law-abiding Marcus, was being reported by a neighbor who assumed his presence was a threat. She quickly unmuted the line. "Ma'am, can you please confirm your name?" "Karen Hargrove. I'm the HOA president." "Thank you, Ms. Hargrove," Tasha replied, her tone cool now. "Please stay on the line. We'll have someone follow up shortly." She paused. "And just to clarify, you said the man identified himself as Marcus Bennett?" "Yes, that's what he said." Tasha closed her eyes, a storm of emotions gathering beneath her calm surface. She could almost see her husband's face. Steady, patient, quietly enduring yet another insult. Across the street, Marcus had taken a seat on the hood of his car, waiting. His phone buzzed. It was Tasha. "Hey babe," he said softly. "You won't believe who just called the cops on me." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then her voice, low and deliberate. "I already know. She called me." Marcus blinked. "You?" Tasha's voice trembled slightly. "Yeah. She dialed 911, and I was the dispatcher." He exhaled, rubbing his forehead. Of course she did. For a long moment, neither spoke. The absurdity of it all, the everyday madness of being doubted in one's own neighborhood, hung between them like heavy air. Tasha finally broke the silence. "I'm sending Officer Ramirez. He knows you. Just stay put. I'll make sure this doesn't turn into something worse." Marcus nodded quietly. "Thanks, baby." By the time the patrol car rolled through the gates, Karen was standing near the curb, arms crossed triumphantly, as though she had done her civic duty. The officer stepped out and immediately recognized Marcus. "Hey, Marcus. Everything all right?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Morning, Ramirez. Apparently, I'm trespassing at my own house." The officer turned toward Karen, confusion flickering across his face. "Ma'am, this man lives here. I've been to his house for community safety checks. He's a resident." Karen's expression faltered. "That can't be right. I've never—" Ramirez interrupted gently but firmly. "It's right. You can check the records if you'd like." Karen looked from the officer to Marcus, then back again. "Well, I was only trying to protect the neighborhood. You can't be too careful these days." Marcus straightened, his voice calm but cutting. "You weren't protecting anyone. You were assuming." For a brief moment, the street went still. Even the sound of the wind through the trees seemed to pause. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The officer handed her back her phone. "Next time, ma'am, please verify before calling 911. These lines are for emergencies." She nodded stiffly, avoiding Marcus's gaze, then turned away, her shoulders tight with embarrassment and resentment. Marcus stood there for a while after the patrol car left, looking at the gate, the street, the house he had worked so hard to earn. He thought about how easily one person's fear could turn his existence into an emergency call. He didn't feel angry anymore, just profoundly tired. He walked back toward his porch, where the morning light had begun to soften. Tasha's voice came again through his phone, gentle but resolute. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm okay. Just tired of proving it." Tasha exhaled softly. "I know, baby, but we keep showing up. We keep standing tall." Marcus looked toward the horizon. His reflection mirrored faintly in the glass door. The day felt heavier than usual, yet somewhere inside that weight was a quiet kind of pride, the kind that refused to bow. The evening air carried the kind of stillness that comes after a storm. Not the loud kind that tears through trees, but the quiet one that stirs the soul. The neighborhood was calm again. Yet beneath that calm, something had shifted. Marcus sat on the porch steps, still wearing the gray shirt from his morning run. The weight of the day lingered in his shoulders. His phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. "Home in 20. He smiled faintly. He could already imagine her expression. Half worried, half proud. That mix of strength and grace she wore like armor. Inside the house, the scent of cedar and lemon cleaner hung in the air. It was a modest home, not the biggest on the street, but everything in it told a story. Photos of family reunions, wedding portraits, a small frame diploma that read Bennett, Tasha, Emergency Services Communication. He ran his thumb over the edge of the frame, thinking about the irony that his wife's calm voice, the same one that comforted strangers in chaos, had been the unseen wall between him and something far worse today. When Tasha arrived, the first thing she did was wrap her arms around him. No words, just the sound of their hearts beating against the quiet. "You did everything right," she said softly. "I know," he replied, but his voice carried a tired ache. "It's just, every time something like this happens, it reminds me how fragile peace can be. One misunderstanding, one assumption, and suddenly I'm a threat again." Tasha nodded, her eyes shimmering in the fading light. "You shouldn't have to live like that. None of us should." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the sun dip behind the rows of identical houses. The golden light danced across the lake in the distance, painting the water in soft shades of amber and rose. Then, almost hesitantly, Tasha said, "You know, after the call ended, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The woman who made it. She sounded so sure of herself, so convinced that her discomfort was an emergency." Marcus tilted his head. "You think she'll learn something from this?" "I don't know," Tasha admitted. "Some people don't change until they have to look at what they've done in the mirror." He nodded slowly. "Maybe one day she'll realize she didn't just call the police on a neighbor. She called them on someone's husband, someone's father, someone who works, pays taxes, cuts his lawn every Saturday, waves at the mailman, and someone whose wife was the dispatcher," Tasha added with a faint smile. That made him laugh quietly but sincerely. "Yeah, life's funny like that." The next afternoon, Marcus returned from work to find an envelope on his porch. It was unmarked, the handwriting neat but hesitant. He opened it and read the short note inside. "Mr. Bennett, I owe you an apology. I let fear and ignorance guide me. I made assumptions I had no right to make. I'm sorry for what happened yesterday. Karen H." He stared at the letter for a long moment. Part of him wanted to tear it up, to dismiss it as too little, too late. But another part of him, the one that still believed in dignity and grace, folded it carefully and set it aside. That evening, he saw her walking her dog past his driveway. Their eyes met for a second, awkward but real. She opened her mouth to speak, but Marcus simply nodded once and said, "Evening." Karen hesitated, then returned the nod. Evening. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something quieter, less hostile. Sometimes that was enough to start the healing. Later, Marcus and Tasha sat on the porch again, just as they did most nights. The sky above Silver Pines was a canvas of twilight blues and fading gold. "You know," Marcus said, "I kept thinking about what you said, the mirror thing. I think that's what this all comes down to. People like her, they don't see us as individuals until they're forced to look closer. Until they see the reflection." Tasha nodded. "And sometimes that reflection scares them, because it shows them how unfair their own assumptions are." He looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "You ever think about how wild it is that you were the one who answered that call? Out of all the dispatchers in the county." Tasha smiled softly. "Maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe the universe wanted to make a point." Marcus chuckled under his breath. "If it did, it sure has a sense of humor." They both laughed then. A small, healing sound that broke through the weight of the last 24 hours. As night settled in, porch lights flickered on down the street. Somewhere a radio played faint jazz, and the crickets began their nightly song. Tasha rested her head on his shoulder. "You know what I love about you?" "What's that?" "You never let anger have the last word. You always find a way to turn it into strength." He smiled quietly. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just too tired to keep fighting every battle." "But that's the thing," she said gently. "You don't have to fight every battle. Sometimes just standing there, calm and proud, is the victory." Her words lingered in the air like a promise. The next weekend, Silver Pines held its quarterly community meeting at the clubhouse. Marcus hadn't planned to attend, but Tasha encouraged him to go. "Show them who you are," she said. Not because you need to prove anything, but because presence is power. When he walked in, conversations slowed. A few people greeted him politely, others with cautious curiosity. Karen sat near the front, her posture stiff, her expression unreadable. The HOA president cleared her throat. Before we begin today's agenda, I'd like to address something that happened recently at our front gate. The room grew still. Karen rose from her chair, her hands trembling slightly as she held the microphone. "I made a mistake," she began. "I acted on an assumption and called the police on one of our neighbors, Mr. Marcus Bennett. It was wrong. I let fear speak louder than reason, and I've had to think hard about why." Murmurs rippled through the room. Marcus remained seated, eyes steady but calm. Karen continued, her voice lower now. "I realized something important, that safety isn't about keeping people out. It's about understanding who we share space with. Mr. Bennett didn't owe me anything, yet his grace in handling my ignorance taught me more than I care to admit. I hope we can all learn from that." When she sat down, the room was silent. Then someone began to clap, quiet at first, then others joined in. It wasn't loud or triumphant, but it was sincere. Marcus didn't stand or wave. He just nodded once in acknowledgement, then leaned back in his chair. For the first time since moving into Silver Pines, he felt something close to peace. That night, back on the porch, he and Tasha watched the lake shimmer under the moonlight. "You handled that beautifully," she said. He shrugged with a small smile. "Sometimes the best response is to let people see who you really are. The truth has a way of settling things better than anger ever could." Tasha reached for his hand. "That's why I married you." He laughed quietly, the sound blending with the gentle whisper of the night. And as they sat together, the same golden calm that had marked their mornings now softened the darkness. It wasn't the perfect ending to a perfect story. Just two people still standing, still proud, still unshaken in a world that too often tried to make them small. But that, Marcus thought, was its own kind of victory. Sometimes, change begins with a story. If this one touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Because empathy grows when we listen, and understanding starts when we see each other clearly.